My name is Senator Summers, and I am here to make a statement. First of all, I can't express to you.
Our Senator, as a member of the legislature, it's for or against nominees, and it's on the nominees today. So
Yes.
Are you testifying?
Yes, I'm testifying against the nominees.
Against
Yes.
which nominees?
Every single one of them.
Okay. The entire Board of Pardons and Paroles, including the new nominees. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so I cannot express to you any more clearly of how horrified I am of what's happening in the state of Connecticut concerning the Board of Pardon and Paroles and the policy that was crafted in the dark of COVID. I'm haunted by this and can't sleep after talking to the families. We are commuting sentences of seriously dangerous criminals that have taken the lives of others, murderers, rapists, and murderers. Many of those who are receiving commutations were sent to prison on plea deals, meaning they pled to a lesser charge than what they actually committed. This was an ironclad agreement, a contract, one that takes months and many people, even years, with countless hours of judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys and families, as well as the accused, to agree on. The defendant gets lesser time served, and the family knows an immutable sentence was imposed, or at least so they thought. Now these same individuals are eligible for commutation, going against everything that families were led to believe. And to add injury to insult, sometimes these families are given 5 days for notification of a pre-screening hearing concerning commutation. I want you all to close your eyes and imagine having a grandson brutally raped and beaten to death. Having that person plead down to a lesser charge, so the rape and the molestation is dropped. And having that person be able to sign up for a pre-screening for commutation. And that grandson was 3 years old, and his name was Andy. Can you imagine having to unpack that, your child's life, the murder of your grandson, in 5 days to be able to get your thoughts together to come and testify or submit written testimony in front of the Board of Pardon and Paroles? It's unfathomable. It's unconscionable. And now inmates can come back every 3 years. So your family has to undergo this trauma every 3 years if they decide to sign up. Every 3 years, the victims are re-victimized again and again. And that's in our statute, right? Because our statute allows the Board of Pardon and Paroles, a group of lay people that are well paid, to override sentencing judges and rulings and plea deals. It's outrageous that this board has the power to take this upon themselves without any notification to this committee, to the governor's office, or anyone to change the trajectory of our judicial system. It's inexcusable to victims, to their families, to allow this to continue, invoking complex PTSD, hopelessness, and actually horror. I'm asking this committee to please do not reappoint anyone to the Board of Pardon and Paroles until there is a meeting with the governor and your committee, which he has agreed to have. Let the committee and stakeholders weigh in on what the policy should be before you reappoint anyone again. Doing this is anything less than this really is a miscarriage of the judicial system.
Questions from the committee?
Thank you for your time.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for being with us. We've heard today that that those who had their sentences commuted have not reoffended. I've been following the work that you're doing. Do you find that statement to be accurate or inaccurate?
I would find that statement to be false, and I will give you an example. Michael Cox, he was sentenced to 75 years in prison for murder, felony murder, manslaughter, second-degree assault with a firearm. His sentence was commuted by 30 years in November of 2021. He then was eligible for compassionate parole in December of 21. The people who were arguing his case said that there was no way that he could be a risk to society because of his medical conditions. In July of 2022, he was charged with strangulation, suffocation in the second degree, and disorderly contact. So that is a false statement.
Thank you. Do you happen to know where that subsequent charge was?
I have the information. I can send it to you.
Okay, yep, just so I can look that up. Thank you.
Further questions or comments, Senator Kistel?
Thank you, Senator Summers, for coming here. I know you were downstairs in public health. Have you had folks reach out to you upon learning of this policy, constituents?
Well, I first learned of this policy when I was contacted by the Carlsons that I know that you heard a lot about today. And I'm glad that everyone feels comfortable in the fact that the perpetrator in that case was not released. But the fact is, the Carlsons, Mr. Carlson can't even say the person's name. He says it by his inmate number. And they are traumatized. Elizabeth's sister had to see her dead sister's body in the house, and they had to go in 5 days and go in front of this committee and relive that again. I hope you have a chance to read the testimony from the woman who's treating them, Dr. Weiss. She has a lot to say about the trauma that these families have to endure. And again, it seems to be that the Board of Pardon and Paroles wants to get everyone to 30 years. I think what we're not recognizing is that when you lose a loved one or when you lose a child or a grandson, you have a lifetime sentence as a victim. And yes, I have been contacted by so many either victims. I've been contacted by people that have gotten commutations and said what's happening now is outrageous. They have submitted testimony that hopefully you will be able to read today. I can't tell you how many people that have reached out. Our own representative, Steve Weir, I didn't know that his wife's mother had been murdered and that she actually had to go through this process also herself. Especially when it's a plea deal. I'm sorry, like
Well,
that is a contract, and now we are violating that.
Well, that was going to be my question.
Sorry.
My last question, Mr. Chair, was we have two scenarios. One is a trial and a sentencing after a trial where the accused is adjudged guilty of a particular crime. But most, I'd say over 95% of our criminal matters are plea agreements. And is it your belief, and have you spoken to constituents to support that belief, that victims or family members of victims believe that there's a contractual nature when dealing with a plea agreement, especially in light of what transpires in a courtroom, having done special public defender work and other criminal defense work over the years? It certainly sounds like that's the written in stone determination when a sentence is meted out through a plea agreement.
100%. People believe that's an ironclad agreement, not a day more, not a day less. I can tell you, I personally sat through a horrific murder trial in my district last year, the Lindquist trial. Eric Lindquist, the only surviving family member, works for OPM here in the state of Connecticut. What happened to his family is unfathomable. And one of the girls who was involved had a plea agreement so she could testify against the other perpetrator and was guaranteed 40 years in prison under a plea deal, under a contract, not a day more, not a day less. She is eligible for a commutation in 10 years. Someone who killed 3 people and set their house on fire under extreme circumstances.
Thank you, Senator Summers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions or comments from the committee? Further questions or comments? If not, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
James Kutu.